Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is really well today. Let's start off with I've noticed in most of my videos I use the word a lot. So in my last video I have done my best to delete all of the and I'm sorry if I say it a lot in this video as well. It just sort of comes naturally to me now. So this video is going to be a review of this item, which is the Louis Vuitton Noe, which is also referred to as the Grande Noe or the Sac Noe. It is the largest size of the Noe bags that Louis Vuitton make, and I thought that we will basically go into my experience, why I purchased the item in the first place, dealing with the seller, the pros and cons of the item from buying vintage to new, the cleaning of the item, and also what fits inside. Now, for those of you who did actually watch my previous video will know that I recently unboxed this item. This item came from a company in Japan. It is a vintage piece. It is 25 years old. It was made in September 1996, I believe, and it was made in France. So when I started looking at this item, I honestly think it was by chance. I think it was by accident when I came across this item, and I think it was through doing my research on the Petite Noe, because I bought the Petite Noe last year, and I think when sifting through Pinterest or going through YouTube videos to find out more about the item, I think a lot of vintage items of the Noe came up as well, and that's sort of how I came across this item. I mean, I was aware of it on the Louis Vuitton website because in the beginning I was sort of in between. In fact, I was in between the Petite Noe and this size Noe, and I eventually decided to get the Petite Noe because I thought that would be the right size. But when I originally came across this bag, it wasn't near the pictures that I looked at, the videos that I watched. They weren't new bags. They were all vintage, pre-loved, secondhand, whatever you want to call it. And I sort of liked the way that it looked, and I started looking on the pre-loved market and doing all of my research through YouTube, and obviously I was looking on Vestiaire Collective and other various authenticated websites in England, because that's where I am. I have never purchased a vintage item or a pre-loved item or anything for a significant amount of money and had it imported into the country before. So I wanted to get this bag from where I was without the hassle of the import fees and whatever, because I had no idea what they were. So I started doing my research and I found a few companies, and every single Noe that I saw, the bag was in, it wasn't in great condition. It was in really, really bad condition. And through doing my research of this, I sort of realised as well that I wanted to, there were certain specific things that I wanted this bag to have. So basically, because I'd seen it vintage and I liked the way that it looked, it was something that I wanted. I definitely wanted a vintage piece, and I also knew that to get that, it had to be in specific condition. So there had to be no rips, no cracks, nothing in the leather or the canvas. I wanted it originally to be around my birthday, so in the 1980s, because I know a lot of people who have bought these have usually try to get it in their own birthdays or close to which. So that's what originally I was looking at. And I did find a few, but again, they weren't in the condition that I was looking for. And also, I wanted it to be in pretty much immaculate condition. I didn't want to have to replace the leather on it. I was planning to get this bag, keep it for the foreseeable, and not have to do any work on it, because I know a lot of people, when they buy them, you know, they mainly look at the canvas, because you can get the leather repairs in Louis Vuitton at a cost, and that's something that I didn't want to do, because one of the main things that I also wanted in this bag, which is something that Louis Vuitton don't do anymore, I wanted a date code. And if I was to get a very, very badly vintage one that needed all the leather replacing, I would lose that date code. So it had to be in immaculate condition based on that. So through watching loads of videos, I came across this YouTuber who had basically mentioned a site called DCT Vintage Japan, and they are a very authenticated seller. They have their own website, and they also sell on eBay. Now, a lot of eBay sellers, I know a lot of people would buy through eBay, but I just don't feel confident spending that amount of money on something purchased from eBay. So after finding out about DCT Vintage, I was happy, because I looked at the website, and a lot of the Japanese sellers who sell on eBay, they only sell on eBay and they don't actually have a website, whereas this company did. And if there's one thing that I noticed about this company, is when you go on the website and you look at the Noes, they're in better condition than you would find on Vestiaire Collective or anywhere else. And I was shocked. And when you go through the photos, there are imperfections on these bags. There are watermarks, you know, there's cracking on the leather and things like that. But the leather is in it's the same condition as this, if not more. I mean, the bottom of this bag, for a good example, look at that. I mean, if you want a vintage item, which is 25 years old, you're not going to get, the bottom is going to it's going to have damage to it or dirt to it. You know, there's going to be discoloration and things like that. But this was in mint condition. And one of the things that I noticed going through the Noes that they did have, because I went back and forwards on this through the website for over a year, and every single Noe or anything with Verkessa leather on it was in immaculate condition. They were better condition than I'd seen anywhere else. So I thought, okay, I have got my list of what I personally want in the bag. So, you know, the leather, the canvas, the decos, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to look through all the bags and see what I can find. And there were quite a few bags, and as I was going through them, I set myself like a rough budget between about, I think it was between about £500 and £600, but I'm not 100% sure. But one of the things that I realised is the better condition that I wanted the bag in, the more money it went up, the more expensive it was. And it was coming closer and closer to current retail price. The current retail price at the time when I was looking at these from Louis Vuitton was £1,400. It has gone up since by £70. And because it was getting closer and closer to, you know, £1,000, and then I thought, well, if I get this and I have it imported, I'm going, you know, there's going to be tax fees, there's going to be import fees, it's probably going to go close to retail. And then I just started thinking to myself, you know what, is it really worth buying a vintage piece when I might as well just buy a brand new piece? So because I had all these fears about buying something and have it imported from Japan at such a cost, and not knowing whether, because when you buy something, it doesn't matter whether you're told it's an authentic seller or whatever, you are still buying it at your own risk of the possibility of it being fake. And I was more than confident that this company was very authentic, but at the same time, if you've never purchased a vintage item before, that is always going to be something that is in the back of your mind. So eventually I thought, okay, I'm just going to buy it brand new. So I stepped away from wanting it vintage and I started saving for a brand new piece. And I was sort of dead set on buying a new piece. And when I was saving, because it took me, I mean, this wasn't cheap, this was expensive. This is I had to save for this. It took me quite a while, because when I decided to get this, I think I decided to get it in either December or January, I can't remember, but my aim was my birthday, which was in April. So I thought I'll get it from a birthday present for myself, and obviously April came and went and it never happened. And so I was just saving and saving and saving, and basically I decided to constantly go back to the DCT Vintage website and have a look to see what they had, and they did have things in really good condition. But because there was like little marks, like you could see like watermarks on the underneath and like oil marks and things like that, and I just wanted it in complete perfect condition. And because of the whole fear behind it as well, it sort of made me stick with the new one. So I went back and forward quite a few times, and when it came closer to me to being able to purchase a brand new one, I started thinking to myself, I've still got the image of a vintage piece in the back of my mind, and if I buy a new piece, I'm still probably going to want a vintage piece. And it was always there, so I'd sort of come to the conclusion that once I bought a new piece, I would still go ahead and buy a vintage piece at a later date. And then last Thursday before last, I had pretty much all the money to buy a new one, and I went onto the DCT Vintage website and I found this, and this was everything that I was looking for. There was no problems with it whatsoever. It was pretty much in brand new condition, apart from the fact that it was 25 years old and it has a lot of patina on the leather. And I started panicking at that point, and I just thought, oh my god, should I buy this? So this is where the pros and cons of buying between vintage and new come into this part of the video. I had to think to myself, I did a further research on this bag, and I thought to myself, okay, what is the difference between, is there much of a difference between buying a new one compared to buying a vintage one? And yes, there is, you know, multiple different things. With the newer pieces, obviously the leather is the same, the canvas is the same, and I'm going to get into that in a minute. I have my theory on that one, to be honest. But the canvas is the same. The only thing that is different on the new piece is the fact that they don't use brass hardware and there's no date code, it's microchipped. And I thought to myself, you know what? Everyone says in all of their reviews and unboxings and whatever, that if you buy a vintage piece, you're getting like the real deal type thing, and you're getting like the brass hardware, and the canvas is thicker than what it used to, thicker back then than what it is now. And I thought I had to take a sit back on this, because it took me 2 days to make this decision, and I sat back on it and I thought to myself, what do I really want? Do I want to spend £1,400, which is what it was at the time, on a bag which is brand new. It needs no work done to it. There's nothing wrong with it. The only problem is it's coated metal that they use on the hardware, and I just thought, if I want something that I'm planning to keep in my collection for the rest of my life, and I originally wanted it vintage, then it has to sort of like, it has to match in a certain way to be that in the future. And I thought, well, the new one has no decos and it's just coated metal. This has brass hardware and it has a decos and it's 25 years old and it's in immaculate condition. And based on the fact that I also had in the back of my mind that I would still always want a vintage piece, which is what made me go ahead and buy this piece. So the communicating with the seller, I contacted them through the website, and I was sort of, because this was at the time, I think this was the only item on the website, or the only style Noe on the website. They had other ones, but they were in epi leather of like multi different colours. I think there was another one like this, but it was like £600 and there was a bit of damage to it. So this was the only one in this condition that was available on their website. So I contacted them, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to contact them through Instagram instead, because you usually get a quicker response through social media. So I did, and I was communicating with the seller back and forward. It was really, really, it was nice. It was a good experience. And they sent me photos when I asked for more photos at the bottom, because I wasn't 100% sure on whether, you know, there was dirt in it or thing. I just wanted more accurate photos that hadn't been placed under a spotlight, because if there's one thing that I do know about this company, is they photograph on a white background, and anything on a white background looks better and brighter no matter what condition it is, I think, anyway. And so I had all that feedback from the seller. I had to think about it really, really hard, and then I was thinking about, oh god, there's the shipping, there's the import fees, the duties and things like that. And I was meant to buy it on the Thursday, and then it got to the night time, and I was really panicking about this, because obviously it's something that I'd wanted for a long time. So I basically sat on it, and I thought to myself, if this bag is still here on the website tomorrow, that bag is meant to be mine, and I will purchase the bag. If there's one thing I've noticed about DCT Vintage when it comes to Noe's, because they're the only thing I've really looked at with this, on their website, they do have an extremely large turnover. So it's not a case of, if it goes, you know, you're not going to see it again. They always have Noe's on their website. It just depends on the condition that they're in. And when I went through their website, this was the second most expensive item that they had ever listed in this condition. So I thought, okay, so this is pretty big. And then I was starting to panic about, you know, the price of it. This wasn't a cheap item. I had to pay through the nose for this item. And to be honest, after thinking about it, the new item, to buy new in the boutique was £1,400 at the time. This was £965, but when I've clicked on the link to this item, it's been lowered by about £15, which I think is a little bit unusual. I mean, I'm not bothered, but, you know, they could have taken that discount off for me instead of just taking it off after they'd sold the item, which I don't think's right in a way. But it wasn't really a big issue because it's only £15. You know, if they took off £200, that would have been great, but you know, I would have had something to complain about then, but they didn't. And then I started to have to think about the quality of the bag and things like that. And then to justify me buying this bag, I thought to myself, what am I really paying for with them that I wouldn't be paying for with Louis Vuitton? And the answer is, I would be paying for the quality that Louis Vuitton once had many years ago. And knowing the canvas would be thicker, it had brass hardware, which means if it tarnished, you could clean it, or the fact that it had a date code, which was quite important to me, to be honest, because I think ever since they replaced the date code, the date codes with the microchips, the bag sort of become cheaper, even though they've raised the prices on it, because date codes, you know, it's also what the Louis Vuitton were about. They were about date, I mean, obviously they were about handbags and whatever else, but the date code was sort of a signature piece that you were able to identify the bag with, and new ones don't have that. So I was basically putting my money not only into something vintage and in extremely good condition, but I was putting my money into something that had a history behind it and that I could build upon. So the following day, the Friday, I went ahead and I purchased this item. They shipped it on Saturday and I received it Friday just gone. So it took about 7 days to get to me. The import fees were about, I think they were £205. That was for import and duties, which wasn't that much, to be honest, because I've seen other people who have purchased these items for a lot less. So for example, like £300, and they've said they've been charged like £115, something like that, for the import and duties. So I was expecting the duties on this to be around £300. So to those people who, you know, I think you'd be ripped off. Sorry, but I think you've been ripped off if you've had to pay that amount of money, to be honest. Also, I think it depends on what shipping company that the seller uses as well, because different companies have different prices. So I think it's worked out like that as well. But yes, it was meant to come on the Monday, but obviously it came 3 days earlier, and that's why in my previous video I wasn't prepared to do the unboxing, but I wanted to get it done and over with. And yeah, because after I made that purchase, the stress was really on. And when I say I was stressed, I mean I started having nightmares about the condition this bag was actually turning up in. I was thinking to myself, oh my god, what have I done? Have I made a mistake? I mean, I was having nightmares about it turning up, the leather being cracked, dark brown, just not in the condition that the photographs had displayed it to be. So obviously I panicked a bit, and I was just, I didn't get any sleep until the bag arrived, I'll be honest. But it arrived, and this is the condition it arrived in. Now let's get on to the cleaning process. When I mentioned in my last video about the condition of the bag, and it had been babies, it had hardly anything, you know, obviously the leather's in great condition, the canvas is in great condition, even the hardware was in really good condition. It was tarnished a little bit, but to be honest, I probably could have got away with not cleaning or doing anything to this bag at all. It did say that it had lost its shape as well, which if you go back to that video, you will see it did actually lose its shape. That's why the bag is now stuffed, because I wanted to train this bag to go back into a shape which was pretty much new, what it once would have been if it was straight out of the boutique, and that's what this is. So basically, for the brass, I used the classic Brasso with some Q-tips to so I didn't get anything on the canvas, which I did. The inside of the canvas was a little bit easier to clean, but I still did touch it a little slightly. But even though I didn't really cause any damage to the bag, I actually did pretty well, to be honest. And on the sides where the leather is on the grommet, around the grommet, I did slightly get a little bit of Brasso on, but I just got a water wipe and quickly scrubbed it off, and it didn't do anything. I got to it in time, basically. It came off. So this is what I used. I used Brasso for the brass. For the canvas, I used water wipes, the Huggies Pure water wipes, and I also used a Johnson's wash, which I diluted with water, and then I dipped a very soft toothbrush in and just went over with the solution and just, you know, wiped it off with the baby wipes, and then dried it with like a microfiber cloth. For the leather, I used Mulberry's leather gel, and this basically conditions and cleans the bag at the exact same time. I went over with this about 3 times on 3 separate occasions. The last time I conditioned it was last night. I originally thought when I got the bag that it was soft, but it must have been drier than what I thought, because now it is like really, really soft. And in my last video with the string, I mentioned that the ends were sort of stiff, like my new one was, and since conditioning it, they're not stiff anymore. They're quite soft. The tips where I've missed a few bits on condition are still hard, but otherwise they are. It's really a lot softer than what it was. Even these parts, you can notice it. So I think it really, I know a lot of people say you can't condition, you don't over condition the leather because you could damage the leather or it could attract dirt to it and stuff, but I think you need to condition it in a way which you don't, when you condition it, don't put too much conditioner on, obviously, but conditioning it a good few times to soften it to the way that you want it is probably the best thing to do, to be honest, and it's how I did it. And also, one tip that I will recommend is that obviously this bit, because it's meant to be pulled in, this bit will crack more, so this is the bit you really need to focus on with the conditioning, just to keep it moisturized so it doesn't crack over time, because I think you will be able to get away with doing that and it not crack the bag, basically. On the inside of the bag, I did put in some Lenore dryer sheets. The bag didn't come with an odour to it, which was actually quite surprising to me, because when I've watched other videos, they've always said, oh, there's like a storage odour and whatever. There is like a slight odour to it, but you have to put your head right inside the bag to be able to smell that odour, to be honest. And I think that because it's vintage, I wanted to sort of make it my own, so regardless of whether there was an odour in it or not, I would have still used these just to, you know, make it mine, as stupid as it sounds. So let's get on to the shape of the bag and how I trained it to basically get into the shape that you can see right now, because if you look at it, it is in the shape you would see it brand new when you get it out of the box. What I did was I stuffed it with loads of clothes, and basically I thought to myself, because there was loads of dents in it and imperfections and it was wrinkles, because it did mention on the website that it had creasing in it, and there was large creasing in this item, and there's still slight creasing in it now, which I can't necessarily get out. So I thought to myself, you know what, I'm not going to be, because I did try it with a bag organizer, and I thought I want it to be in its best condition, so how the hell am I going to do that? So I remembered a video that I had watched by Erica by Design years ago when I was doing research to buy my Speedy 25, and obviously that comes flat, and she did mention about, you know, doing it at your own risk, putting a towel over the canvas and steaming it with an iron. And originally I thought, okay, well, maybe I should do that, and then I was thinking I don't really want to do that because I don't want to damage this item, because it was so much money. So when I was stuffing the bag, I was on my bed, and in front of, next to my bed is this window, and it was, obviously the weather's been really hot recently, and my bedroom's in the back part of the house, which gets most of the sun. And as I was stuffing the bag, when I touched the corner that was facing the window to turn it round to stuff the other corner, I noticed how hot it was. So I thought to myself, maybe if I just put it in the window and rotated it, I could get the creases and wrinkles out that way. Because I do believe, from my own experience as well with my own canvas bags, that in heat the canvas softens slightly, so you can sort of mold it to whatever shape that you can. So for a few hours every morning, I basically just put it in the window and I rotated it while it was stuffed like this, and I think it has pretty much done its job and got all of the wrinkles out. So I'm going to basically now remove all of the items in the bag, and we're going to see whether or not it's actually held its shape. So the item is now empty, and as you can see, it has sort of, its shape is still, it's a little bit off, but I think it's the top part that needs most work on, these bits here, because if you look, it sort of goes in like it goes out like a triangle, which I don't want. So I think I'll have to restuff the bag, just to get the shape that I want, really, which I was expecting to do anyway, to be honest. But as for the bottom, I think I pretty much got it the way I wanted it. Also, I don't like the fact that this sort of bends out. A good example of a crease in or a fold in the bag, you can see right there, it hasn't done anything, it's still there, the mark, and I don't like that. I need it to be my version of perfect, basically. So now we are going to look at what fits in the bag itself. For many people who have seen all of my other items will know that I always use bag organizer from Handbag Angels. They are a English company and they are very affordable. I would say they are just as good as Samorga or anything like that. This is the organizer. I do have like a few bits in it at the moment, so it's sort of like weighing me down. So this is the organizer. This is what it looks like in the bag. So let's start putting things in. Firstly, we have an iron flask water bottle, which will go in the bottle holder. I have a catch-all with like bits in, like medication, face creams, bubbles, brushes and stuff like that. I have a Coach cosmetic case. My Tiffany sunglasses, which I will be doing a review on straight after this video. I have my dental kit, which I need to keep on me at all times because I have braces. I have my key clay with my keys in on my Dragon key ring. I have a Laneige lip treatment in Sweet Candy. and as you can see, it all fits pretty well, and there's still room in there to spare. This isn't something that I would necessarily have on me at all times, but it's good to know that you can actually get this stuff in the bag if you wanted to. One of the main reasons that I bought this bag as well is because I'm doing a law degree on Open University, and I like to be able to do coursework out and about, so go to a coffee shop and do things like that. So I wanted to know whether or not I could get a 13-inch MacBook Air in there, which is this one. Yes, you can. That fits pretty well with everything else. It does make the bag quite weighty, but obviously, like I said, I wouldn't carry everything in here that I have in here. So I have just restuffed the bag because obviously on the other side where it goes in, I want that to soften a little bit more, train itself so that it does get to the shape that I want it to go in without any problems occurring in the future. There is one thing that I forgot to mention that I thought I would just throw in just before I end this video. I briefly touched upon the canvas of the GM Noe compared to the Petite Noe, which I now have both vintage and new. And I have to say, there is absolutely no difference between the thickness of the canvas whatsoever. And I've heard a lot of YouTubers saying that vintage is a lot more thicker, a lot more luxurious. For those of you who don't know, in the heat or in certain types of weather, the canvas can become softer and possibly seem thinner in some cases, and because the GM is a vintage one and it has been well used, there is a lot of patina on it, which means it has been in the sun for some time. I have noticed that it's quite soft, and it's sort of why it folds in on itself quite easily. It's why I needed to sort of like mold it back into shape. But compared to the Petite Noe, which I have, honestly, the Petite Noe's canvas it's thicker. It's not, there's no comparison there whatsoever. I think basically because my Petite Noe is a year old, it's still in its newish type of condition, so it still has that stiffness to it, and I think over time it will come into the same form and suppleness as the GM will over time, because I don't believe that there is any difference in the canvas whatsoever. Now, unless around that period of time they use different canvas materials to create the Noes or the Neverfulls or the Speedies, but from what I can tell, there isn't a difference. And all of my collection is new. It's not vintage. This is my first vintage piece, so that's how I know there is no difference between the canvas. But like I said, they might have been different canvases that were used around that period of time to make these bags, but again, I don't know. I really hope you enjoyed this video as much as I really enjoyed making it, because I did. Please like and subscribe, and if there's anything you want to know about this item, just leave a comment below and I will get back to you. But yeah, that's it for this video, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.